Bien, ça, ce sont des Français.
C'est les Indiens, ça qui est drôle.
Ah,
alors que dans la cuisine indienne, il n'y a pas
I know that there is another big thing tonight, like apparently a big game. I don't know about it, but thank you very much for showing tonight. So about the agenda of the evening, so I will do a really short presentation about L'Atelier, what we are and what we do, and about the future of food and why we are talking about that tonight. And after we will have three great speakers. So Jean from Kite Hill, Gilonne from Harvest, and Arturo from Clara Food. After that, we will let you ask some questions, and after we will enjoy some wine and some great cheese offered by Kite Hill, and some bread over there also from Square Eggs. Thank you very much. So, what is L'Atelier in only a few words? So we are the innovation lab of BNP Paribas. So our goal is to track digital trends and to detect disruptive actors for our clients. So we have three offices, one in Paris, one in Shanghai, and one here in San Francisco. And we have three main activities. So we are a media company, so we have a website where we write articles about new technologies. We also have a radio show every week. So our head of media is over there, Arno, if you have any question. And we are also an incubator here in the US and in France. And we are also a consulting company. So we have six main topics. So fintech, smart city, e-health, smart mobility, future of work, and future of retail. So let's deep into the subject right now. So what is the future of food, and why do we talk about this subject tonight? So basically, we all know that, but the population is expected to be 9.6 billion by 2050. So more than 3 billion than we are today. So it will be new challenges for a lot of subjects, for the city, for the new mobility, transportation, for the future of work, like for many subjects, but the most important one will be about food. So how are we going to feed this population in the future? So in order to feed this almost 10 billion people on the planet, we will need to increase by 70% our food production. So can we really do that today? Do we have enough space? Do we have enough water? And can we still produce the way we are doing it today without overstress our environment? This is a big question. So let's understand in just a few numbers where we are now today. So today we produce 270 million tons of meat every year, which represent a lot of water and a lot of land and a lot of CO2 emissions. So basically, it represents 35% of the world's arable land and 35% of the CO2 emissions today. And if we want to produce enough meat for those 2 billion people in the future, we will have to produce 75% more of meat in 2050, which is really a lot. And if you compare this to the other numbers that we have here, it's just totally impossible, and it's not sustainable. So what we know is basically that our food system is not working in the long term. So Ali Partovi, which is a serial entrepreneur and a startup advisor in the Valley, said something really true. If you were designing food and ag system from scratch, you would never end up with what we have today. So our big goal right now, and the big goal of all the startups in the food tech industry, is really to disrupt this industry in order to be able to feed all the people that we will be in 2050. So what are the solutions? So I have some of them here, but I'm sure there is other ones. So the first one would be to better produce thanks to data-driven farming. So for those who are interested about this subject, we will have a big study about that that will be on our website next month. so feel free to download it. The other solution would be to change our alimentation and consumption habits, so basically to eat less meat, because it's a big problem today, but also to consume and to produce better, because as a reminder, be aware that we also waste 1/3 of the food that is produced today in the world every year, so it's a lot. The other solution would be to use other animal protein sources, like insects, for example, which is a big trend. And the last one is to create alternative animal proteins thanks to plants, like Kite Hill is doing with the nuts, basically, and thanks to new technologies like Clara is doing with the eggs. So I think basically that the best solution would be a great mix of everything, but it's my point of view. So just some results, so I didn't want to overstep the presentation of my great speakers here, so I just put it some example and results for Impossible Food, from Impossible Food, which is a great startup for the Valley too, which is actually making some steak without any animals. And their results today is to produce a steak with 99% less land used, 89% less CO2 emitted, and 85% less water used, which are really great results for the future. So our big question is alternative protein the future of food? And I think it will play a big role in the future for sure. And there is a great study made by Lux Research saying that almost 1/3 of the protein market by 2050 will be for alternative protein. So if we look more closely on this report, so sorry for the picture, it's not really great, but I hadn't any others. So you see that for now, the market of alternative protein is mostly the first generation. So the first generation is soy, actually. The second and the third will be about other plants that are like highly protein sourced. And after that, we will see more and more businesses with using algae, insects, synthetic biologic protein, agricultural waste, and in vitro. And basically in 2050, you can see that half of the alternative protein market will be made by algae, insects, synthetic biology, and ag waste and in vitro. So a lot of people are really afraid of what will happening in the food industry, and really wants to know more about it, and they are thinking that it may be dangerous for us, and there are like plenty of questions. So I would say that in our history, animals have always been reemplaced to meet the long-term demand. Basically, we were using pigeon for leather and for communication, and now we were using horses for transportation. Now we have cars, and we are still using cows for alimentation. And I think we may see other stuff in the future, and it could be really disruptive and really great for the long-term demand. So that's all for me, and I will let now the floor to Jean from Kite Hill. And if you have any question at the end, you can ask any question to all of us.
Lessen our dependence on industrial livestock by offering a line of dairy products that would actually deliver a breakthrough tasting experience. We recognize that on the market, no good alternative was offered to consumers, and we thought we could do something better. Data showed that, as Agathe mentioned, dairy farming has a massive impact on the environment. It's responsible for a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, it requires a lot of water, and actually an interesting fact, the land equivalent to California and Washington states together is required in the US to produce meat. So it's a huge pool usage of the land. We then recognized that the dairy market was globally a huge opportunity for us. It's a market that's evaluated $350 billion. 40% of that market is from milk, liquid milk. In in any form, 34% for cheese, and the rest being butter and yogurts. And if we zoom on the milk market today, it's only 10% of that market that is represented by alternative milks, mainly soy and some other sources. But very interestingly, soy has been declining in the market. Soy is declining by 46% when almonds are increasing and are actually, soy by 60%, almonds increasing by 46%. So there is a trend that we noticed that reinforced the importance of almonds in our diets. Almonds and nuts in general are actually today very popular for health reasons, because we have many different diets that are actually recognizing the importance of nuts in your diet for the amount of fat that are bringing, the quality of fat that are bringing. And all of those trends together, which is a small portion of the market being today captured by dairy alternatives, an increasing popularity in nuts, a declining interest into soy and into the dairy products, put us in a situation to consider what we could do to disrupt that market. And our answer to that problem is actually to take a raw material like nuts and make a dairy products directly with it, by skipping a lot of the steps that we have today that have poor yields into feeding a cow with alfalfa, getting the milk, transforming that milk into cheese and putting that cheese to the market. We skip a lot of these steps by bringing a great product. And that product is something that we have patented. So we're the only one today. We can actually curdle a plant-based milk and make cheese with it. So our whole technology is to make cheese the same way we would make dairy cheese, but we're replacing dairy milk by almond milk. That was the fruit of multiple years of research until 2012, when we had prototypes of these products. These prototypes have been early accepted by Whole Foods, who's at the top of these trends. And Whole Foods wanted our products, so we then developed a plant in Hayward, in the Bay Area, to make the milk and to make the products that we're commercializing today from that almond milk. So what you see are actual pictures of our products. You can see our milk looks like dairy milk. Actually, it's we joke on saying no cow has been harmed by making our products. That's actually true. You can see the curd in the middle picture. That looks like a dairy curd. And then you can see one of our products. In that case, that's our ricotta. So these products, 4 of them, were actually the first ever plant-based cheeses. And we insist on the fact that these are cheeses because we make them the way we would make dairy cheese. We're not cheese alternatives. We are cheeses because we respect traditional techniques, coagulation, emulsification, and draining, which are ancestral techniques, and that's the way we make cheese. We launched nationally at Whole Foods in August 2014 after having tested the market in the Bay Area and a little bit more on the West Coast. And what made an impact was that Whole Foods put our product in their cheese department. So we were not sold with the other alternatives, with the other vegan and plant-based product. We were sold in their cheese set. And that made a lot of sense and made a lot of impact for us because Whole Foods recognized for the cheese set, they put Kite Hill products in the cheese set, and people made the connection. They made the connection between Kite Hill and great tasting products. Hopefully you'll have a taste later today and you can share that. But that was really the breakthrough for us when we started to see increasing sales with Whole Foods beyond our expectations. Soon after launching these, we kept developing products, and we're still developing new products, and we came up with actually a second variety of products, spreadable cheeses, cream cheeses, yogurts, and working on milks. So looking at our platform, we migrated from very special occasions cheeses to a daily use of the product. And today, our best-selling items are actually our yogurts because it's a daily consumption act. It's priced similarly to yogurts on the market, and it brings the same tasting experience. We have had a great press and a great return on media on our product, whether it was food specialized media or actually business specialized media. You can have people from Food and Wine saying that your products are actually a great deal, or Oprah magazine naming us into the 50 genius inventions. So consumer-oriented, business-oriented, food-oriented, Reader's Digest, and a lot of press from the US, a lot of press and attention from actually Europe and Asia as well, because the trends of going away from dairy and going into more plant-based foods is not only something we notice here, it's something that's happening also in Europe. And France, very interestingly, although it's cheese country, has been showing and is continuously showing a great interest into our products, and that's probably our next destination as we are building relationship with major retailers over there. A little bit about our team. Matthew Sain, our CEO. I am the VP Manufacturing Operation. 3 founders. Monte Cassino is working on product development as well. Our 2 founders on the right are not actually actively working with us anymore. One of them, Pat Brown, you may know, his name is working, actually has founded and is the CEO of Impossible Food. He has, I think, that in him to create something to disrupt the food industry, and that's why he created Kite Hill as long as Impossible. Strategic partnership. I mentioned Whole Foods, Impossible Foods, because we're very close, and we were at some point sister companies. Khosla Ventures believed in us at the very beginning, and we recently raised a significant amount of money with General Mills. It's been in the press, so there's no secrecy here. General Mills invested in our company because they believe that what we're doing is disrupting and is actually bringing something different to the customer. They believe that not only our yogurts, but also our cheese line is a very important move in the industry and something they haven't seen for a long time, and that's why they actually invested significantly in our company. So to summarize, Kite Hill today is uniquely positioned on the market to convert that $350 million market to a more efficient, more sustainable, and a better for you market by having great products, by having global patents, by having a great team and a successful track of commercializing new products. We've done it, we know how to do it, we can do it again, and having a clear path to profitability with great partners, Whole Foods, General Mills, Khosla Ventures, and Impossible Foods. We have product after, I'll be behind the counter if you have any questions about them. I'm really happy to answer anything. And again, if you have any comments or questions, I welcome them very much.
Hi everybody. My name is Gilonne, and I wish I could be putting up the basketball game right now, so I'm sorry that I'll make it quick and hopefully very entertaining for you. And hopefully by the time I'll have finished, you won't have had so much wine that you can't learn anything. Lie down, Sophie. Sophie is the chairman of New Harvest. I work for New Harvest, and we're a nonprofit research institute advancing breakthroughs in cellular agriculture, which means that we're advancing research mainly in academic labs, but also independent labs to make animal products without animals. That's meat, milk, eggs, leather, that are made from cell cultures and not harvested from animals. So this quote from Winston Churchill in 1932, it really illustrates the work that we do. In 1932, in this magazine called Popular Mechanics, Winston Churchill was making predictions called 50 years hence, and one of them, he said, 50 years hence we shall escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken simply for its breast or its wing by growing those parts separately under a suitable medium. And what he really was describing is cultured products, cultured cells, which right now is being done mainly in medicine for growing a heart or a liver or skin, for instance. And by 1982, which was 50 years hence, this had just started when Genentech, which is a company here, had created Humulin, the first time when people who were diabetics could have insulin that was suitable for a human body rather than insulin that was harvested from the pancreas of cows or pigs. It transformed their lives. So essentially they took a cell, a yeast cell, and the yeast cell was genetically coded. They put a genetic code for human insulin, and it turns sugar and minerals into human insulin. And it's transformed people's lives because there's no more rejection and allergies and all those things that used to come. And speaking of cheeses, all cheeses are made exactly with that same system. Until then, cheeses, the rennet that transforms milk, that curdles milk into cheeses, was taken from the fourth stomach of cows. Now it's done, most of it is done through that same system. So why do we do the work we do? Well, Winston Churchill said the system was absurd. Well, today we think the system is even more absurd, and Agathe pointed out some of those absolutely monumental numbers, so I'll spare you a little bit, but there are four main reasons. One of them is that the livestock industry poses huge risks to human survival, and this is not hyperbole. The reason why we have antibiotic resistance is because 80% of all antibiotics are given to livestock. This is a photo of the bird flu epidemic that took over the world a few years ago, and these things spread extremely fast. There was, according to one study, 56 billion chickens grown last year for human consumption. And you'll hear Arturo talk about egg whites that he's making in cell cultures. Chickens are an enormous problem, in fermentation, but chickens are an enormous problem because they're grown in so many numbers, and every time a virus transfers from one chicken to the next, it amplifies and it mutates, and then you get monsters like we had recently, and there's more and more of these viral epidemics. Just now we had a bacterium that was found in a woman on the East Coast that for which there is no antibiotic that works, and that comes from pigs in China. So, oh yeah, and here, this is kind of a horrifying photo. This green thing is a lake that in which the green comes from algae. And these squares are all feedlots, and you probably can't see, but inside each feedlots there are little black dots, and those are cows. And that green thing is all their manure. And that is taken in Texas, and it goes down into the Mississippi and into the Gulf of Mexico, creates this dead zone. Big problem. And another big issue is this terrible stain on our conscience of how some 60 billion animals a year are being treated in absolutely horrific circumstances. Most of the animals that we eat in the United States, about 95% of them are grown in these factory farms, and they will, if you needed any push to become a vegetarian, then you go to a factory farm, and there's one on the way down to Los Angeles. It is a nightmare. So we are at New Harvest developing this field of cellular agriculture, which falls under medical science, and food science, but really receives money from neither. So the developments in medical science are things like tissue engineering, where if you get burned, you'll go to the hospital, they'll take a little sample of your skin, grow it in a petri dish, put it back onto your skin, it's your skin. That's what we put back onto you. And now these technologies are getting fairly sophisticated. Same thing, we're working with a lab at Harvard where the team is building a heart. Obviously it's not a big heart like that, but they're doing tissue cultures to grow a heart. And then in food science, well, there are all of those things that are being done at Kite Hill, for instance. General Mills has an enormous food science department, but really the merger of those two has not been done until New Harvest. And by the way, we were created in 2004. So what we're saying is that actually we are so separated from nature at this point with these factory farms. And we're wondering if actually having a cultured meat system isn't bringing us back closer to hunting and gathering in terms of the resources that are being used and the purity of the products that are coming out of them. Because, and right now here you have cultured meat, which as you see in terms of the land use, which is the vertical and the energy use on the horizontal, is absolutely monumental for poultry, pork, lamb, and beef. And the research that, actually the first research in this, but there were subsequent ones on the life cycle analysis of cultured meat versus animal grown meat shows massive savings with the cultured meat. You have to bear in mind that this is still theoretical because the cultured meat does not exist at scale, and I'll show you why afterwards. But this is an interesting question that we can ask ourselves of hunting and gathering probably fits here in that graph, and it's an opportunity for us to return there or a little bit closer to that in terms of the use of our resources. And so we think that this world is not just a pipe dream, we think this world is possible. And Arturo again is going to show you how he's brewing eggs. So this is a moment that was made by Arturo's company, Clara Foods, and it started as a New Harvest egg project, and we wondered, is it possible to use this yeast in the same way that it's making insulin to make egg whites and really turn this very simple feedstock into proteins. Same thing with this this milk, which is cultured free. So it was also a New Harvest milk project, and this is a prototype. I don't think that's exactly milk free entirely because they're still in prototype phase, but they're getting there, and it's a very exciting idea that you could have exactly the same milk, exactly the same egg white that doesn't need an animal to produce it. And finally, this is cultured meat, and I'm going to focus on that for the rest of the presentation, because that's where there are most questions and is furthest away from market. And this cultured meat, this is a burger that was grown in the Netherlands in the Mark Post lab a few years ago, well, closer to when New Harvest was created. The idea was, could we push research to see if it's feasible to make a cultured meat? And so New Harvest got the Dutch government to fund 3 different research labs in the Netherlands to get a cultured meat project going. And one of them was the Mark Post lab. We were approached by Sergey Brin Foundation a little bit later, who said, you know, we really want to be funding this kind of research. And we got money we got the Sergey Brin Foundation to fund this research in the Netherlands, and this is the burger that came out of it. And so we're very excited about it because this is really what we think is the next revolution, like Agathe was saying, and it's also part of human evolution. This is really showing how our relationship to meat has shaped us as humans. And so 2 million plus years ago is pretty much the appearance of language, and that coincides roughly with with when we started to hunt. And then when we domesticated animals, and roughly around there fermentation, like for cheeses appeared, that was the beginning of history. We suddenly had time to start writing an alphabet and writing our lives. And then more recently, we had this industrialization where the animal becomes a cell factory, actually more precisely a protein factory. And we have moved from the animal, as Agathe was saying, that will serve all sorts of purposes in our lives, to serving really as this factory. And if you were to invest in a t-shirt, for instance, or 4 t-shirts, in comparison to investing in a chicken, and it would take 54 days to make that t-shirt and you would only get 4 t-shirts out of it, it's a lot of resources and time that go into making a very simple product, which would be really the equivalent of growing 1 chicken. There must be a simpler, better way. And we think that simpler, better way is self-cultivation, and this is a brewery, because that's really at scale is what we imagine these cell cultures to be grown in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the burger, just so you get a sense of where it's at, and you're still teachable because you're not too drunk yet. So this is a photo of that burger. It's one of the samples. You see it's marked number 1. So how was it done? It was done by taking, theoretically, you take these cells out of the muscle, you do what's called a cell line, which is a cell that will reproduce itself, and then you put it inside. This is what's called fetal bovine serum. So this is the food for the cells. And then you put each one of these are 2 cells that are dividing in a petri dish. And then finally, theoretically, you get your burger, all right? So you would think, oh, it's pretty simple, easy process. Well, we haven't figured out a lot of these things. We haven't figured out the muscle, how you take these cell lines. They exist. Cell lines are a little bit like yeast or any kind of, almost like a commodity that you would buy on a catalog order. But right now, the ones that you can buy on a catalog order are for medical purposes. So, for instance, Chinese hamster ovaries are very well-known cell lines. But there is no such thing as very common muscle cell lines for pigs, for instance, or chicken. Those have to be figured out. And then, although we know how to do them, it's a matter of time and resources putting in. But this thing is the killer. This fetal bovine serum, which is the media, the food for the cells, we haven't figured it out. And look how laborious all of that is. So we have to figure out how to scale it, and that's what the research at New Harvest is trying to advance. We need to accelerate the time between this stage and the stage when we can think of commercialization. And so, you know, I'm telling you how big the problem of fetal bovine serum is. So you have to kill a cow and her baby in order to get that liquid. So every one of these bottles is 1 calf, and you take the blood out of its heart, and it's about half of that blood goes into it. It's a really inefficient system, and it definitely doesn't take animals out of the equation. This is how much fetal bovine serum was used for those burgers at Norcross Lab. Not super efficient. Great proof of concept though. We still have to figure this out. So our question at New Harvest is, how do you go from here, when we flew for a minute or so, and it was a miracle, to SpaceX, when you can actually have a private enterprise that's sending people into outer space in less than 100 years? Well, you build a field and you make it fertile. So at New Harvest, we conduct research, and very much like a conductor in an orchestra, all of you would be our different musicians, and all of you would be doing a different kind of research, and we bring it all together so it coherently makes sense in the whole. That's how you can accelerate it into the market. We convene stakeholders, so we have, for instance, a meeting in a couple of months with a few of the professors who are interested in this kind of research, figuring out how we can ask for more funding from the government, because this is very much an outer space type of program where we need all the resources at our disposal. And finally, we inform the public. And for that, we have, for instance, a conference later in July. I'm going to give you more details. These are the organizations we work with. Here are private companies. You see Clara Foods, who's coming, and I think I've been eating up on your time. And these are universities. And so I will jump to our fantastic, wonderful graphics about our conference on July 13th and 14th, which sucks for French people. So none of you guys are going to be coming. No. Oh, good. Thank you, Agathe. That's it. I'm done. Thank you. Wonderful Arturo, CEO and co-founder of Clara Foods, and I'm going to tell you about eggs.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Arturo from Clara Foods, and we're creating the world's first animal-free egg white. Egg whites, as I'm sure you're aware, have become incredibly popular over the last few years, and making their way into grocery stores and restaurants across the country. So much so that they've tripled in price over the last 3 years to command over an $8 billion market just worldwide, wholesale-wise. But meanwhile, egg whites continue expanding into new and growing product categories beyond the classic baked goods. They've become a critical binding agent, including free products and vegetarian meat substitutes. But they've also become a staple at almost every McDonald's and GNC for their protein content. But at their core, egg whites are simple. They're 90% water, 10% protein. They have almost virtually no fats or cholesterol, no carbs. And the vast majority of the protein content is represented in just a few proteins. And these proteins are actually what give egg whites their incredibly diverse set of functionalities. They're a little messed up, I don't know why, but you'll get the picture. The proteins are actually what give egg whites like the foaming and binding and gelation abilities that make them an indispensable ingredient across almost every product where they're used. And after much research and prototyping, we've discovered which proteins actually do what, and which proteins can actually make an egg white cook, look, and taste like any other egg white. And not only taste, but also function, is how do you create ingredients that not only that can outperform or match what's currently out there. Meaning that we can make almost any product that an egg white is ingredient in, like these French macarons. But then we thought, why just recreate what's already out there? What if you could design the perfect ingredient, the perfect product for every kind of use? And if you think about it, every single egg white that's ever been made has been the same. Whether you're a baker, making the fluffiest angel food cakes and meringues, or using egg whites as a food manufacturer as a binding agent for your gluten-free products and veggie meat substitutes. Or you're a home cook making a high-protein omelet. It's the same egg white. And so what we thought is, well, we know what the proteins do. What if we can dial in on these key characteristics? So one of the focus areas that we're looking at is the baked goods applications. So what if you can make products that actually are lighter and fluffier to create new kinds of foods and food experiences, and kind of enable bakers and chefs to truly innovate in this field. And so one of our tests was, how can you make an egg white foam a lot more to really create these new kinds of foods? And all this is just, all we do is we vary the protein profile. So egg whites have the same protein content across, regardless of the application. But the proteins are actually what give egg whites, the foaming and binding. And so all we do is we can dial in that property and say, well, if you are a baker and you want a fluffy meringue, is you want the foam. So you can actually dial in on that property. So that's how we're able to create these new performance ingredients. But working at the individual protein level to make all of those possibilities a reality means having to use an incredibly inefficient protein factory that Gilonne mentioned that we call the chicken, where that converts all this water, grain, we plant the bundle with antibiotics, and then wait 20 to 25 weeks for it to even start laying eggs, get those eggs, separate them, sometimes even throw it with a yolk just to get to the egg white. And then if you want to work with the individual proteins, you have to then reverse engineer it, which becomes an incredibly inefficient process. We, on the other hand, use nature's far more efficient and environmentally friendly protein factory called the yeast, that in the same way that brewers use yeast to convert sugar into alcohol to make beer or wine, or bakers use yeast to convert sugar into carbon dioxide to leaven bread, our yeast converts the same sugar but into protein. And then all we do is mix those different proteins in the right proportions to create all our new ingredients. Our process allows us to create products that are inherently superior, but without compromising the qualities that we know and love, like taste and appearance and nutritional value, but ultimately also enabling us to create and outperform on these key performance capabilities like foaming and binding. With all these advantages, I think we're uniquely equipped to really take on this problem, because we can help companies meet their sustainability initiatives. Just like Impossible Foods is incredibly efficient compared to beef making, it's that we're up against industries that are just incredibly inefficient and incredibly unsustainable. So we can use far less water. Actually, does anyone here know how much water it takes to make a dozen eggs? How many liters? Is your French? Just take a wild guess. Say a number.
50 gallons or something like that.
50 gallons?
Yeah.
For a dozen eggs? That's a good number. Anyone else? Just say a number. You probably have a better idea. No? All right, it takes over 600 gallons of water to make a dozen eggs. That's over 2,000 liters. And it's because chickens are incredibly inefficient at converting these things. And for a large part of their life, they're just sitting there consuming without producing anything.
Well, can you repeat that? How many liters?
Yeah, it's over 2,400 liters of water to make a dozen eggs. That's around 636 gallons of water. I can send you the study if you want. I should have quoted it here, cited it. But for us, we're fortunate that we can ultimately build kind of the future of what protein looks like. It's not just for us. I think egg whites is a big goal of ours. But ultimately, is how do you reimagine protein production in a way that you can make it far more sustainable, more ethical, and ultimately more accessible to a larger number of people. Thank you. That's my co-founder right there, and our newest intern, Randy.
Does anyone has any questions? Or do you want to all eat the Kite Hill cheese? Okay, great. Thank you.